that's part of the realization that a lot of people it's just the day to day, especially within the care community, whether that's medical or not, of just forgetting that piece. And it's so normal because I forget to do that with my own kids, or I forget to do that with my own sister about grief and understanding her perspective and her grief as well from losing our sisters. It's just like a human thing to do, to like want to fix what's going on versus sitting and listening and maybe taking a pause to understand what's going on, or like you said, to give it a voice or to give it a little bit of light.
What happens when the person you love has a stroke and you're left grappling with a confusing mix of guilt, shame, and anger? This is part 2 of our vital conversation on grief and recovery. If you missed our first episode focusing on aphasia survivors, it's linked in the show notes. Today, we shift our focus to care partner grief. When a stroke happens, it impacts the communication partner too, and those feelings of guilt, shame, and anger are incredibly real. This second powerful episode is a must listen for anyone supporting a loved one through aphasia recovery. Taken together, both episodes offer crucial insight from both the survivors and the care partners' perspectives, which is so necessary to rebuild life after aphasia. Megan, thank you for joining me again. We are talking about grief, identity, but this time it's about aphasia care partners. And I'll start with, just so you, Megan, have some context about what I see. I've been doing this a really long time. I've worked in every level of rehab. And it never occurred to me, because I was so focused on what I needed to do for speech therapy, that I didn't fully understand what I was doing to a care partner when all I did was demand, almost in a way, like, why aren't you using these speech strategies? Why aren't you doing the homework? What's failing? You have to do this. You got to help your person, right? And it was almost this, like, why aren't you helping your person? And I never was in a position until probably the last 5-6 years, and I've been doing this 31, that we have to approach care partners very differently for them to be successful. Because we do know that recovery after a stroke or aphasia works best when both are working together. So rehab will put the emphasis on the person going through it, the person who the stroke and aphasia happened to. From acute care to rehab to home health to out, there are steps each of us, if we're working in that setting, we have to go through. It's like a checkoff list, but we don't stop and think. All we're doing is giving the care partner a to-do list, and we have these really high expectations. What if they were working and now they're spending 12 hours in the hospital? And I think it's not talked about. And really, when it comes out for care partners is when rehab ends, when they're not chasing around to all the outpatient sessions. If the person
Yes.
needs OT, PT, and speech, they could be going 3, 4, 5 times a week to a rehab center, plus the grocery store, mailing the bills. Maybe they're working as well. How do they do it? Their identity has changed, how they show up in the world, and they don't get that time to grieve.
The first thing, obviously, and this is anyone in grief, is expressing what we feel. And when I say I want to hear it all, as a grief coach, I have literally heard it all. I've heard the things that people would think are shameful, but I'm like, yeah, give it to me. I understand that these are things that could come up for you, especially if there was trauma or if there was something going on between the dynamic of those two. Yes, I see where there's a lot of layers there. I think the most important word for this person is, what is your role Now, just as if you are in your family, even the family you grew up with, everyone had their role. I was the third born, so we all know my role. It was just be taken care of. But there was a role that you played in their family, and there's a role that you played in this person's life prior, and that completely changes overnight. So there is this amount of acceptance and understanding of what that looks like for you, that you do have to grieve what you used to be for that person. And sometimes it can even be like, well, I took care of them sun up to sundown in a partnership, not before any kind of diagnosis. And so you may be losing some of that too, not just the continuous care. You may have some of that taken away from you because you're not capable of doing the homework. Like you said, maybe they do need additional help. So someone else is having to come in and do that for you. But the other thing I want you to realize is you as a person, as a human, have a different set of skills, and each person has not just a role, but what their specialty or strengths are. And care partner may not be that. You may have just been jolted into a position in which you are not capable of. And so you're having to really discover these skills that you just didn't think you had. Now, can we all do it? Yes. I think that as a community of people, as a human being capable of doing extremely hard things. But it is the process of coming into that and knowing what you can do. So I give the example of you may not be the best at, say they're under restriction, a diet restriction. You may not be the best cook or something. And so some of these restrictions of what you can and cannot feed or what you're providing may not be in that set of skills that you have. So you're having to lean on other people, other things. That is okay. So knowing that you can lean on other people, that you do not have to be at all,
Oh,
is okay.
so good right there.
Let's not be a martyr.
You don't be at all.
Yes.
Wow.
And that's an easy thing to fall into. I mean, I think it's easier for you to be like, I have to do it all because X, Y, and Z. And some people may have that kind of like ability to do it. But there's also this point where you're like, how much? And again, what are those boundaries going to be? So, would it be best though for me to kind of give some steps, or do you feel like there is something in particular about grief that you want to
Mm.
dive in?
I think let's talk about steps. And I think in the context of that, more will come out. Because as people hopefully watched our first episode, even though we are
Hmm.
talking to survivors, there's a lot in that episode that directly relates to the care partner.
Right.
So let's talk about some steps,
Right.
because the quicker we can get the care partner to kind of understand that their role has changed, their identity has changed, and acknowledge everything they've taken on, they feel
Mhm.
guilty that they can't do it all. You still had everything you did before the stroke, and now you're taking on everything else. You're picking up the slack. You're taking over new roles and responsibilities. Maybe you've never paid the bills before. Maybe you don't know the retirement accounts, and now you've got to manage all that. And most people, most care partners I talk to, take it all on. They don't delegate, and they don't know how to delegate. That's a whole other topic. I think we can't get to the delegation part until we deal with the grief part.
And it does go hand in hand when someone is grieving and they feel like they have to have everything really heavy and difficult. That is part of the grief period. Now, yeah, emotionally, it is going to be, could be the hardest thing, if one of the hardest things that you've ever done when it comes to losing this, the representation of this person or what they were in your life. Okay, that is very difficult and will always be there. That's going to be the grief that we're really trying to work through
Yes.
and handhold. The grief, the guilt, the shame, and the anger are the three things that we have to really work on first. Those are what I call the toxic symptoms of grief. Sadness, it's always going to be there. Okay. It's just like it's happening. And that really heavy feeling, that's also grief and will be there. But what shouldn't be there and what eats us alive and what also causes the care partner to become ill is those things: shame, guilt, and anger. And so, how do we work through those things? That's going to be different for everyone, obviously. Now, anger could be of how they're treating you, but for someone else, it could be anger that just happened in the first place, anger that there weren't signs and symptoms, anger that block X, Y, and Z, So, anger shows up differently. I need you to figure out what the anger shows up for. I need you to investigate why you feel shame. No one is sitting here in your face and saying, you shame, you should feel this.
You're
So
right.
I need to know why you are internalizing it as shame and how we can pivot into something that is, again, it's a softer side of grief, which is the sadness and kind of even overwhelm. And then anger. So anger, shame, guilt. Guilt is interesting because guilt is meant to help us navigate what's right or wrong. Like that's the purpose. Like what guilt of what are we supposed to do? What should we do in our not only like subconscious, but also like our core beliefs and our what is challenging us
Mm,
on those things until it moves into what I said, which is becoming a martyr, where you feel like you have to take on all of these things because if you don't, you'll be perceived in a certain way, or you like the shame that it brings because it means that you keep the grief there in a weird way. Grief is weird. It makes us act and react so differently than we know ourselves to do. So it shows up and you're like, what, who is this? It's someone who feels like I deserve to be a martyr or I deserve to be in the guilt. And that's not the truth. That is what either someone or society has programmed us to believe,
mm.
that if you're not caring for someone in a certain way, then you aren't human. Generations of care
Oh
partners
my
and
gosh.
caregivers
Yeah.
who believe that is the only way. In today's society, we're trying to change that narrative. All caregivers, parenthood, caregiving in a middle stage or older stage, we're trying to change that narrative as much as possible because we can outsource many things. But if you think about it, we've always had community in villages. So, what is the purpose of all of that if we can't fully embrace it and know that one person can't do it all? Also, if you sit with yourself, visualize you sitting on that other side of the couch. Ask yourself these questions. Why do you feel this way? What will this prove? Speaking to yourself in a way that has compassion. It sounds silly to a lot of people to outwardly express themselves like this, but it's the way that you unlock how you really feel and how you really should respond in your brain. It's the conversations out loud or even in your journal that really help you understand not only yourself, but also the things that you can change. So there's so many things that I too have been like, that's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. Whenever I do the work and say, give yourself the compassion. I understand why you feel this way. Now, with the compassion piece, how can we change and do this differently that suits your role, your capability, your capacity. Capacity is a big word right there. And also what you're willing to give, like literally what you are willing to give, because this is your life too.
Wow. It's almost, and I go back to rehab, like where in rehab do we start presenting these things to care partners, like
Mm,
asking the question, what is your capacity? What are you willing to do? What are the
yes.
boundaries? And then us professionals can help navigate. Some spouses don't want to be the physical care partner, right? They can't help with the activities of daily, or they don't want to. They don't see themselves in that role. They want to have a relationship with their person.
Mhm.
We could start identifying that early on.
Yes.
Then us rehab professionals could potentially approach it differently.
Absolutely. So in my kids, he's in kindergarten. What they do before the kids go into the classroom, they have these jars, and then you're given like your stick. So your stick has your name on it. And each jar has a label. Like, I'm doing 100% today. The teacher is able to understand where that child is that day in order to understand, okay, is there behavioral issues that may pop up because they're upset? Or, gosh, this guy's happy today. Like, he's listening, he's involved. Maybe that's when the teacher's like, what happened last night? Or what's going on? So I think that maybe even putting just a very simple process in place where you're like, hey, what's the capacity today? Let's say it's a temperature read. What is the temperature read today? And it could be three simple questions of what's your capacity? Give me a percentage here. Also, have you discovered a reoccurring theme that's happening when you are implementing some of these changes? Is it that there's got to be a better way, or are you saying like I need help with this? Do you really just want to focus on being the care partner, and like you said, kind of the reverse thing of like I want to just be here and support and help, and I don't want to do the finances, I don't want to do the credit card, yada yada, I don't want to do any of that. So then that's like, okay, well, you have such a great network here in Austin, but you could say, okay, well, I have somebody for that.
I got a name,
You
and if that's
probably
not the
do.
name, at least you'll know what to Google to find.
Absolutely.
And I think if we could start for care partners, helping them see that they don't have to do it all, that we can acknowledge that there is anger, guilt, shame, just even
Mhm.
using those words and say, that's part of the process. And then let's
Mhm.
figure out what your capacity is. Let's figure out what you're willing to do and what we need to delegate.
Absolutely.
You mentioned on the last episode control. That is a huge word.
Yes. It is within grief because it's so uncontrollable, because you do feel like your life has been shattered,
Yes.
then what control is left? There really isn't a whole lot other than the things that you can physically do sometimes as a care partner, but the control of someone else, obviously that's not going to have. Like, you'll never control it. But what can I control within me and my life?
Yes.
And that empowers you and gives you hope. And let me tell you what is not given when you walk in the door at rehab or anywhere else is hope. Okay. Like, now when you walk out the door, there could be hope. But when you walk in the door for the first time, there's just, you don't know what to think. And of course, like, the person can see the person who is healing or working through their own medical issues, right? They may see little pieces here and there because they're actually doing something productive and proactive for them. Like, that could also be part of their story, which I think is important. Is to, when I was talking at the other podcast, that is part of it too. Of what did I do that moved the needle a little bit? Like, that's important. For the care partner, it's, yes, what you did for them, but what did you do for yourself? That's the most important. I want someone to be productive and care for someone else if that's what it is. I'll give you an example of my family, where kind of we all fit now in our grief. It's been 15 years since my middle sister passed away. And so you have me, who's like the one who will investigate a little bit more and pull things out of people. My oldest sister is the fixer, and she's productive, and like, she would definitely be the one to take over finances for someone or like say, I'm going to do this for you, like very much proactive in that way. My mom is the one who's going to sit with you and she's going to be the care partner that's just, can I get you? What can I get you? Because she loves that's her love language. Like she loves that. And my dad has always been like, yes, strong and steady, but he also can listen really good.
Mm.
He is a girl's dad for sure, but he can listen. So I give you that example because I want you to see that there is a community of people, whether that's family or groups are so important. Whether you need to be in a group, and yes, your person needs to be in a group. Like the care partner needs to be in some sort of group or community that supports them and understands them 110%. But also the people that are in your immediate circle know that they're there and what are they good at? They want to give back. I'm like, please, I am physically coming over there where I may not be able to cook you a dinner, but I will clean that house of yours. Okay. Because that's my strength. So it's also knowing when you're outsourcing, you're also looking for people who want to give back to you too. And you may have those in different capacities in your life and what they're able to give. I think that finding support for yourself in the very beginning, I think implementing for anyone who's working with a family to first say what your capacity, like just implementing that simply would be golden.
Yeah.
You could also use this as a form of connection. When the grief guide that I'm giving you guys, do it together.
Yes.
Maybe if they can't express themselves, let's talk about this. This is hard stuff that we don't have to go through this alone. It's okay if we want to talk about it. Let's talk about it. That's another form of connection, even if it's just sitting there in silence, to be honest.
I want to put a label on it.
Okay.
My husband did this. And they had a term and they said, embrace the suck. Embrace the suck. And you know what? You can apply it to anything. And I think
Mhm.
by even just saying that out loud or writing it down, you just acknowledge what you just said, Megan. This is hard. This sucks. I'm angry. I'm pissed. We were just going to start our retirement. Like we've worked our
Yes.
whole lives to get to this. And now this is crap.
It's just, that's such a good term for it. That it's just like you're grieving several parts. You're grieving the past and the relationship you had.
Mhm.
You're grieving the role,
Yep.
your personally, the role, and also your part in this family, this relationship. And then you're grieving the things that you thought were going to happen, the things that you really wanted, that you were looking forward to. It is breaking. And the real grief's only met when you simply acknowledge the things you are going to miss out on and not feel shame about that. Like it could be the smallest things that you're like, man, I really, I looked forward to having our Thursday night dinner at this certain place we went to every single thing every day. The other part that I just want to point out is the denial.
Mm, let's have it.
Just
Dude.
because you are walking and breathing through this life as a care partner with someone who's been diagnosed, I feel like there is this acceptance that is so deeply rooted in this work of calling it out and really understanding, and then having what we said was like the burn practice where we're writing it down, we're letting it go. All of that is to also reduce and hopefully completely eliminate the denial. This is happening. No one asked for this. It's like you are now part of a club that you didn't ask for, that you honestly couldn't have even comprehended until this day.
Yes.
And I don't think that even if I sat here and listened to a bunch of stories, I could not physically and mentally prepare myself for what they're experiencing. So know that this is real and you are completely justified by feeling this denial because you're like, no. This was not us. This was we had this all planned out. We raised some kids, or we built this business and now we're supposed to be living this certain life. And it's very heartbreaking. So I do want to give light to that. But denial will be present in a way that can really, it could almost be the leading cause of your own major heartbreak. Like you're already heartbroken, but like denial is the, it makes this even more harder and does not give you any relief if you
That's
sit
right.
in it.
I was just thinking that word because you have to kind of acknowledge it. We talked in the last episode about, and you described it really well, where you just have that uncontrollable crying, but it's when you get to that moment of, and I remember this when
Mm.
my grandmother died 32 years ago. My grandmother died 32 years ago. But it was an important part of my life because that was right when I was going to get engaged. She got sick
Mm.
and he was ready. I didn't know it. He was ready to propose, but then she got sick and she was gone in 2 weeks.
Wow.
And then my engagement happened months after that, after we worked through it. So I was
Mhm.
reminiscing about this, but I remember even 1 year after she died, 2 years after she died, I'd be in bed and it just this horrible wave, like tsunami, not just your little wave, tsunami of grief would just come over me. And I
Yeah.
had to, and being in the dark and alone allowed me to express that. And I remember that time when I would get to the end of that, however long it took, and that just that breath. And that's when I could start coping.
Exactly. Wow. That's such a good example. And I think everyone can imagine, especially once they've had loss in their life and this rebuilding phase. This is completely a new rebuilding phase and a shift. I said it on the last podcast that everyone is going to have some sort of identity shift in their life. It happens. We haven't recognized that in past generations that that is going to happen. No one prepared you for that. No one put the emphasis on that until really recently. And that's because more and more people are kind of shifting in different ages, and that looks differently now. So just accepting that that identity shift is going to happen, in other words, it could be new to you and you know that it's normal and it's a response, that there are ways to help yourself. You're not going to fully express all the grief you have out. It's going to live with you because at every turn, you're going to have a reminder, right? There's always something that just like saps you in the face for what you thought was going to happen. Maybe you plan something for a year from now, or there's something that comes up that you're like, ah, we just can't do that. And we would have been able to do that before. Every turn, there's going to be a reminder. So then you're going to be left to jump back into that grief in certain ways. So that's why it's important to know that I think that sometimes the people who do not fully commit to some form of therapeutic modality. I even say if you're not able to speak in talk therapy or group, 110% recommend a sound bath. You are laying there, the vibrations, the connection that you're able to have with yourself is unmatched. Every grief group that I host, I have someone who does sound bath for them at the very end. And every single person's like, what just happened? Because it does vibrations, and there's science behind all of that as well for healing and healing the cells as well. But so I think there's things for everyone. So again, if you're not ready to talk, you're going to listen in a group. Sound bath, chiropractics, maybe you find some relief in a massage because your body aches from this grief. So there's different, it's going to manifest differently in everyone. And there's different ways to help yourself other than having just to, let's go and dive into the deep end of therapy. I'll even go back to the gratitude guide, is what I call it, just that I do every day. It shifted my grief, and it shifted even my whole like postpartum depression. Like it shifted everything in me when I started to do a gratitude guide, which is first we're going to establish what are we grateful for. Is it literally, if there's nothing that comes to mind at all, it's the coffee that I had this morning was chef's kiss. It doesn't have to be anything profound or big. It just needs to be something that gave you comfort or joy and that you're grateful for that day. Then we're moving into what was a win. Did you finally get in touch with the insurance company and we
There you
finally
go.
can put to bed the long-standing phone tag and all these other questions you had?
Yes.
Win, man. Thank you. Win for the day. Then we're going to move into the last part, which is what could I do differently? What could make tomorrow even better? And that's where your brain can transform into this growth mindset where you're thinking of the things you're looking for the things and you're pointing your brain in the direction of, okay, we want to get better. We're not trying to go backwards. I think the more that we feed ourselves with just like either neutral information or, yes, positive information, the better. That's in your music. That is what you're watching on TV. That is what you're consuming in any form. Know that all of that information goes into your brain and impacts your response to life in general. That's why it's important to find your people or find a person that will support you as well in everything that you feel.
So, with the gratitude, you're saying number one, what is it you're thankful for? And then the wins, and what are you going to do different tomorrow? Go through those
Mhm.
3 points again for us.
Okay. So gratitude really rewires the brain. That is a scientific fact. And it's really just pointing, again, it's pointing your brain and feeding your brain the information about your day that was good. Now, when you do that, what happens is your brain will be like, oh, that ignited, your brain gets flooded with the best hormones and chemicals that you want, which is the good stuff of like, oh, she liked that. So I want to do it again. I want to do it again. I want to do it again. It's also, that's how bad habits start. The ice cream at 7 o'clock at night. That was a good thing. However, now your brain's like, oh my God, the way you're so happy. So you want to really flood your brain with the things that really you felt gave you joy, growth. Comfort's a big one because if you're not able to find growth and joy, which is not an everyday situation, what brought you comfort? The blanket, the animal that you have, the conversation, the something that is tangible or not, a thought you had that you felt really directed your day, or even the way that you were able to transition out of a really hard experience or thought process. That is also great to identify. So mental, physical, whatever works for you. And then the second thing is your win. Or what was like, you'd give yourself a high five for that. I remember, I'll give you the postpartum example. I remember I took a shower and was like, this is it.
This is a win.
You did it. Like you were on this little slump and you weren't taking care of yourself and you decided to do it. You decided to show up and figure it out. And now look how it's not even that hard. You can do this. Not only is this a win, but you've also proven to yourself that this is important to you. And so that's also kind of where your core belief system kicks in, says you can do this and this is possible. What could I change? What could I make different to make the day better?
Yeah.
I made the bed, and man, if you're type A like me, that was like feels so good. I'm going to do that in the morning. I'm going to change that one thing.
Yes.
I'm going to drink more water. I'm going to call that person. What could I do in a more positive sense to make the day better that would make me feel supported in my goals or myself? Because again, this is your life too.
That's right.
That you just completely dissolving because this happened to someone else is not the goal here. The goal is for you to be a support system And yes, it's going to pull you, it's going to shape you, it's going to force you to be different things and show up differently for yourself. And that is okay. And also, it can be pretty fulfilling if you let it. It depends on where you are. My hope would be that every care partner really does give themselves grace and attention and love that they would give not only their person, but you're always the last. I just hope that, and I wish that for every care partner.
Megan, I would love for you to tell us where people can learn more about you and your practice and to be able to work with you, get the resources you have. How can people find you?
So my website is Coach Megan Young, Megan Young, and all as far as sessions or groups that are held, they will all be placed there. I'm fairly active on social media, so it's Life with Megan,
Okay.
Life After with Megan.
Life. Okay.
And that's primarily because there's a pre and a post event. That event is different for everyone. So I try to give as many tips and perspectives as I can with what that looks like when your life's been shattered, basically. Working with me, I am taking one-on-one clients, and honestly, a lot are virtual. So if time is an issue, there's always a space or amount of time that we can find for you.
Wonderful. Coach Megan Young, thank you for spending this time with us today. We were able to give examples of lived experience that people can understand and feel like they are not traveling this road by themselves.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be on here. As you're listening, if something made your ear tinge a little bit, or, that means it was for you. So hopefully you take that and run with it on the information.
Rehab ends, recovery doesn't. Rebuild communication, rebuild connection, rebuild life. This is Life Beyond Aphasia.